The expulsion letter was still warm in his trembling hands when the principal told him his kind did not belong at a school like this. By sunset, the farmer's son had packed his books into a worn-out backpack and walked past the same gates that had never truly opened for him. The next morning, the entire campus froze at the sound of blades slicing through the sky. A black helicopter descended onto the football field, and stepping out of it was a billionaire who asked for only one person, the boy they had just thrown away. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Black Voice Story for more powerful stories that uncover truth, resilience, and justice. Because sometimes the people the world underestimates are the ones who change it forever. The town of Ashbourne sat between endless fields of corn and a fading railroad track that hadn't carried passengers in decades. It was a kind of place where families had lived for generations, where last names carried more weight than talent, and where change arrived slowly, if at all. At the far edge of town stood Westbridge Preparatory Academy, with its brick walls, tall arch windows, and banners celebrating academic excellence. It was a school built for legacy. Its hallways echoed with the footsteps of children whose parents were judges, business owners, city officials, and donors whose names were engraved on plaques across campus. But one name was never engraved anywhere: Malik Thompson. Malik was 16 years old, the son of a third-generation black farmer who worked 60 acres of inherited land just outside Ashbourne. The Thompsons had survived droughts, recessions, and silent discrimination that never made headlines. They had learned to endure. Malik's father, Isaiah Thompson, believed in two things with unwavering conviction: hard work and education. He rose before sunrise every day, hands hardened by soil, spine bent from years of lifting what the land demanded. And yet, despite his exhaustion, he always made time to check Malik's homework at the kitchen table. Westbridge had not been built for boys like Malik. He was admitted on a scholarship after scoring higher than any student in the district on state exams. His teachers in middle school had called him gifted. His math scores were nearly perfect. His essays carried insight beyond his years. But at Westbridge, he was not known for his brilliance. He was known for being different. He did not arrive in luxury cars. He did not wear designer watches. His shoes were clean but old. His backpack had been stitched twice at the seams, and in classrooms filled mostly with white students from wealth. His presence unsettled those who had never questioned why everyone else looked like them. Principal Charles Whitmore had led Westbridge for 12 years. He was respected, polished, and protective of the school's image. Donors trusted him. Parents praised him. He believed in maintaining standards. But his standards did not always feel equal. From the beginning, Malik felt the quiet scrutiny. Teachers double-checked his answers, as if expecting mistakes. Security guards watched him a little longer in the hallways. When something went missing in class, eyes shifted toward him before facts did. Still, Malik endured. He stayed late in the library. He tutored classmates who pretended not to need his help. He avoided confrontation. His father had taught him that sometimes survival required silence. The incident that changed everything happened on a Thursday afternoon in advanced economics. A class discussion turned heated over agricultural subsidies and land ownership. A privileged student mocked small farmers as outdated and uneducated. Laughter followed. Malik corrected him with statistics. The room grew uncomfortable. What began as academic disagreement slowly shifted into something personal. Words were exchanged. Tension sharpened. By the time Principal Whitmore entered the classroom, the narrative had already been shaped. Malik was described as aggressive, disruptive, intimidating. No one mentioned the insults that had provoked him. No one mentioned the smirks. No one mentioned the history. Whitmore called Malik into his office before the day ended. The office walls displayed photographs of alumni shaking hands with senators and CEOs. Legacy, power, prestige. Malik stood alone in front of the desk. The decision was swift. Expulsion. Zero tolerance for behavioral misconduct. No hearing. No investigation. No acknowledgement of context. Just a letter placed into his hands. By evening, the news had spread across Ashbourne. The farmer's son had been removed from Westbridge. Some said it was inevitable. Others said discipline must be maintained. Isaiah Thompson said nothing at first. He simply placed the expulsion letter on the kitchen table, stared at it for a long time, and felt something old and familiar settle into his chest. Not surprise, recognition. But what no one in Ashbourne knew was that Malik's story did not begin in that classroom, and it would not end at those gates. That night, Malik sat on the porch steps, watching fireflies flicker over the fields his family had cultivated for generations. The silence between him and his father carried more weight than anger ever could. Isaiah finally spoke about dignity. He reminded Malik that intelligence could threaten those who relied on hierarchy, that sometimes the system protects itself before it protects truth. But he also reminded him that injustice leaves fingerprints, and fingerprints can be exposed. Unbeknownst to Principal Whitmore, Malik had not only excelled academically, he had also been participating in a national youth innovation program focused on sustainable agriculture. His research project had gained attention months earlier. He had designed a low-cost irrigation monitoring system that could help small farmers reduce water waste by nearly 30%. The project had been submitted to a prestigious foundation funded by one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the country, tech billionaire David Langston. Langston had built his fortune developing renewable energy software, but he had grown up on farmland, not unlike Isaiah's. He rarely spoke publicly about it, but those who knew his history understood that he carried deep respect for rural families. 3 weeks before Malik's expulsion, Langston's foundation had shortlisted his project for final review. The same day Malik was expelled, Langston personally reviewed the finalists. He paused on Malik's file. The application video showed a teenage boy standing in a modest barn, explaining complex agricultural data systems with clarity and passion. Behind him, weathered tools and dusty sunlight framed a life built on resilience. Langston requested a background check. What he found unsettled him. Within hours of learning about Malik's expulsion, Langston's team began making calls. Westbridge Preparatory Academy had never received a call from someone of Langston's stature. The next morning, students gathered on the football field as a helicopter circled overhead. Teachers stepped outside. Principal Whitmore emerged from his office, confusion tightening his expression. The helicopter landed in a storm of dust and noise. Parents who had come to drop off their children stopped their cars. From the aircraft stepped David Langston himself. He wore no extravagant jewelry, no visible signs of excess, just quiet authority. He asked to see the principal. Inside Whitmore's office, the tone of conversation shifted rapidly. Langston had done his homework. He referenced Malik's academic record, his innovation award nomination, his community impact hours, his flawless disciplinary history prior to the single incident. He asked about the investigation process. Whitmore's confidence faltered. There had been no formal inquiry, no witness interviews beyond a handful of statements, no review of security footage. Langston then mentioned something else. His foundation had been considering a multi-million-dollar endowment to Westbridge for a new STEM center, but investments required alignment with values, integrity, fairness, opportunity. He informed Whitmore that expelling a top-performing scholarship student without due process did not reflect those values. Meanwhile, outside the building, students whispered as news spread. By midday, local reporters had arrived. Someone had leaked the helicopter footage. Social media ignited. The story was no longer about a disciplinary issue. It was about injustice. Langston requested to meet Malik. Isaiah hesitated but agreed. That afternoon, the helicopter returned, this time landing near the Thompson farm. Neighbors watched in disbelief. Langston walked across the dirt driveway and shook Isaiah's callous hand. He listened, not as a billionaire, but as someone who remembered what it felt like to be underestimated. He told Malik that his innovation project had won first place, a full scholarship, a national platform, and mentorship from leading engineers. He also made something else clear. Talent should never be punished for existing in the wrong room. News cameras captured the moment Malik boarded the helicopter, not as an expelled student, but as a young innovator invited to a national summit. Back in Ashbourne, Westbridge faced scrutiny. Parents began questioning the administration. Alumni demanded transparency. Donors paused contributions. Principal Whitmore realized too late that power built on perception collapses quickly under truth. But the story was not finished, because justice rarely arrives quietly, and consequences do not always unfold in the direction expected. Within 72 hours, Westbridge Preparatory Academy convened an emergency board meeting. Emails leaked. Security footage surfaced. The video showed the classroom incident clearly. It revealed taunts directed at Malik. It showed him attempting to disengage before being provoked again. It showed restraint, not aggression. The narrative unraveled. Public opinion shifted decisively. David Langston issued a statement through his foundation, emphasizing the importance of equitable educational practices and implicit bias training. The statement went viral. National media picked up the story. Ashbourne was no longer a quiet town. It was a case study. Under mounting pressure, the school board conducted an independent investigation. Their findings were undeniable. The expulsion had violated procedural policy. Bias, conscious or not, had influenced disciplinary action. Principal Whitmore resigned before the report was finalized. For years, he had controlled the narrative within those walls. Now, the walls echoed differently. Students organized forums on inclusivity. Teachers attended mandatory training. Scholarship policies were reviewed and expanded. But the most powerful moment came weeks later. Westbridge publicly invited Malik to return. The offer included a formal apology and reinstatement. Yet by then, Malik had already stepped into a larger world. At the National Innovation Summit, he stood before an audience of engineers, investors, and policymakers. He presented his irrigation system with calm confidence. He spoke not of resentment, but of responsibility. He described how small farmers, especially minority-owned farms, often lacked access to cutting-edge technology. He explained that equity was not charity. It was infrastructure. The room rose in applause. In Ashbourne, students watched the live stream in stunned silence. The boy they had underestimated now spoke on a national stage. David Langston later announced a partnership initiative investing in rural STEM education across underserved communities, including Ashbourne. But the funds would bypass institutions unwilling to reform. Westbridge was forced to compete for redemption. The climax of the story was not revenge. It was revelation. The truth had surfaced, and once seen, it could not be unseen. Months passed. Malik enrolled in an advanced STEM academy sponsored by Langston's foundation. His project expanded into pilot programs across 3 states. Farmers reported measurable improvements in water conservation and crop yield. Isaiah continued tending his land, pride settling into his posture. Ashbourne slowly recalibrated. Westbridge hired a new principal committed to transparency. Scholarship representation increased. Community advisory boards were established. But perhaps the greatest transformation occurred within the students. They had witnessed power shift. They had seen how quickly assumptions could collapse under evidence. They had learned that silence protects injustice. Malik returned to Ashbourne 1 year later, not as a student seeking approval, but as a keynote speaker at a town education summit. He walked through the same gates that once closed behind him. This time they opened. He spoke about resilience, about systems that need reform, about the responsibility of institutions to protect potential rather than police it. He never named Whitmore. He never expressed bitterness, because his victory was not personal. It was structural. The Billionaire's helicopter had been dramatic, but the real arrival was accountability. The lesson echoed beyond Ashbourne. Talent is universal. Opportunity is not. And when opportunity is denied because of bias, it does not erase greatness. It only delays its spotlight. Malik Thompson's story became more than a viral headline. It became proof that injustice can trigger exposure. That power can be challenged. That one decision, made unfairly, can unravel under scrutiny. And that sometimes the boy walking home with an expulsion letter is already walking towards something bigger. If this story moved you, reminded you of the power of resilience, or opened your eyes to the importance of equity, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Black Voice Story, because these stories matter, and voices that were once silenced deserve to be heard.